Back right now at 5:30 with some more local headlines for you.
Yeah, here are the big topics. Governor Lamont's proposed tax cuts for businesses, a proposed name change for the Thames River, and the very latest on Pepperidge Farm doing business in our state. Dan Haar with Hearst Connecticut Media joining us now with his take on all of that.
Yeah, Dan, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Yeah, we do want to start. We've been reporting a lot this week about this proposed tax cut. What's your take on all this? Could it happen?
Yeah, the business and it's called the business entity pass-through tax, and basically the very short 15-second history of it is that when the Republicans under former President Trump, excuse me, passed the tax reform in 2017, that limited the amount of state and local taxes we could deduct. And so in order to help small businesses, which are essentially pass-through, meaning they tax themselves, say a dry cleaner, as individuals, not as corporations, they got hurt by that. This created a separate state tax that enabled them to deduct it. But the state, in its wisdom, didn't let them deduct the full amount. This brings it back up to the full amount. It cost about $60 million. It'll benefit businesses to the tune of about $60 million, which is not a huge amount for the state to swallow, and it makes these businesses whole. So that's a good plan.
Susan Rath has been reporting on this for us. I was going to say it's a pretty complicated issue, right?
Well, it is. I don't fully understand it myself. It's one of these CPA things. But the long and the short of it is small businesses will get a benefit worth about $60 million, and it won't cost the state that much because almost all of that is now going into the surplus under the rules that ironically were passed that same year. So the long and the short of it is it's a good tax. The other one that the governor wants to do, just quickly here, is he wants to restore or do away with the surcharge on the corporate earnings tax. Those are the big companies, and large, mid-size, and big companies. And that's going to be about $80 million separately as a tax break for business. Together, they start to add up.
Dan, let's talk about headline number 2, the Thames River. There's talk of changing the name here. What's going on?
Well, it's only been called the Thames River for 350 years. Prior to that, it was called the Pequot River under the Native American name. And Chairman Rodney Butler at the Mashantucket Pequots would very much like to see this, and I don't think anybody should be against it. I get that we have a name called the Thames River, but the Pequot River has a better ring to it, and I have a feeling that's going to pass. It's one of these things like the state food, except in this case, it really is a sensitivity issue. This traditionally was the Pequot River, and it's only 15 miles, so, you know, let's do it.
All right, and the pronunciation won't confuse people either, at least. That's always interesting. Finally, Dan, Pepperidge Farm, staying in the state, but also a big departure as well. What's going on here?
Pepperidge Farm has 2 big operations in Connecticut. Of course, it was founded by an amazing woman, Margaret Rudkin, in 1937, and it's been a Norwalk institution ever since. The bakery moved in 2002 from Norwalk to Bloomfield. Those 400 jobs remain and, in fact, will be enlarged. Campbell Soup, which has owned for 60 years Pepperidge Farm, is moving, sadly, that operation from Norwalk, which had a new building built in 2012, to New Jersey, where Campbell Soup is based. I have a feeling it's partly because they don't get enough people in the office anymore, and they need a bigger critical mass, so they're bringing in other offices of other brands to Camden, where Campbell Soup is based. A loss for Connecticut in branding and 170 jobs.
Oh, that's too bad. All right, Dan Haar, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Just a reminder, Dan Haar writes about politics for Hearst Connecticut Media. You can read his columns on ctinsider.com and in the New Haven Register, Connecticut Post, Middletown Press, and all the other local Hearst newspapers.